Hey, if you'd like to earn CEUs for this webinar, join the Safeopedia community at the link in the description below. Now on to the show.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jamie. And it's a pleasure to be here with everyone today. I'm joining in from London, so fresh from a day of work. So my energy levels are still here to give you a good talk. So I am going to talk to you about my work in safe leadership. I'm throwing up here for you a copy of the model, which is from the book, The Safe Leader. And what I'm going to unpack for you as we go through this session is really the chronology of how I arrived at coming up with this model. That we dip into elements of theory of safety, and we talk about how can we use this to help win the hearts and minds of the male majority, the people that make up the majority of the engineering profession and high risk industries. So I do have a tendency of saying engineer. When I use the term engineer, please use that more broadly to just think about anyone working in safety related fields. Okay, next. Okay. Also, my style is quite TEDx, minimal slides, storytelling. I'm a big believer in that. That's part of our training. So I'll be treating you to some of that. So it's 2013. I'm at a coal power plant just outside Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I'm on an exchange funded by the Department for Energy as part of my PhD, visiting from the UK. We're walking around, getting a tour around this power plant, and at one point we're walking past the coal burners. The pulverizers are pulverizing that coal, making it into fine dust before it gets put into the heaters, and it is hot. We're walking along, and there is an elevator or a set of stairs for us to move up to the next floor. We get the option which way to go, and I follow everyone else and go into the elevator. Doors close, button pressed, we start ascending. We nearly get to the top, but we don't quite make it. The lift stops. Now I am stuck in the corner of the elevator right next to the control panel, and I mentally start to panic. I start to think, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? Why did I just follow everyone? The Brit inside me thought, oh, don't worry about it, don't cause a fuss. But the engineer in me thought, well, no, a lift is supposed to go from A to B. We're not yet there. Something's gone wrong. Luckily, someone came to get us. We weren't in there for that long. We eventually got to our level and out we went. I share that with you because there was a moment where I questioned my safety earlier. I was at the back of the queue as I was walking, and I could have chosen to take the stairs rather than the elevator. But I just simply followed everyone else. I didn't voice my concern for that we were exceeding the capacity of this elevator. So very often in life, those moments happen where we could stop and say something, but oftentimes we just go along with the flow. I'm Mark McBride-Wright. I'm founder CEO of Equal Engineers, and I'm going to talk to you today about how we can use physical safety and technical safety and expand that to include psychological safety. Use this as a language to help engage majority male workforces that can sometimes feel a little bit alienated when we talk about inclusion programs. And I think that the answer lies within the heart of our safety work to help create more traction on inclusion. I'm a safety engineer by background, and I spent my career helping people create physically safe working environments. I worked at the Qatar Carbonates Research Centre at Imperial College, where I pursued my PhD. Now, prior to me setting up Equal Engineers, I didn't know anything about diversity in engineering. And when I was choosing PhD courses, I had a moment where I just got engaged to my boyfriend, who's now my husband, and I essentially had to say to my potential co-supervisor, I'm uncomfortable. Am I going to have to travel overseas? So who I am was affecting a decision I was going to make. He allayed any concerns and encouraged me to pursue my PhD because it was a fabulous opportunity. I look back on that moment and I think that's part of who I am. Part of who I am could have affected a decision that I made and the outcome that I went on to have. And being gay and being part of the LGBTQ plus community brings an element of identity which you cannot see on the surface from looking at someone. And all of my work really looks into that surface level leadership versus getting beneath the surface and understanding someone's lived experience, getting curious about it. And as men, we've often been role modeled in life growing up not a wide range of emotions. And internalized shame can manifest itself as anger. And there is a lot of work nowadays in men's work to try and unpack this and ultimately create cultures where people can be open about this. And so my own personal journey was, being in the closet and then coming out, and the experiences of that, living through a period of time where the workplace wasn't the most inclusive. And we see this pendulum swing with equality go forward and back. So my question to you is, when you engage with your workers, with your employees and your peers, how much do you know about them really? And that's part of what we explore in the Safe Leader model. It's sharing with one another what one is going through, and increasing lived experience, knowledge of lived experience, so that you can get to know people better. And I'm a big believer in the art of storytelling for creating more inclusive cultures. I earned what I call my rainbow stripes for diversity in engineering by setting up what went on to become the United Kingdom's largest network for LGBTQ engineers. And this is a picture of my husband and I walking down Pride, walking in Pride in London with over 100 engineers, and it was a real highlight. The sense of unity and community was absolutely fantastic, and it was particularly poignant this year because it was when the Pulse nightclub shooting had happened in Orlando in Florida, and it sent ricochets through the LGBT community globally. So there was this real sense of unity and coming together. I can speak from my perspective of being LGBTQ plus, but other than that, all the other identity groups that are represented, I pretty much fit into the majority. I'm white, I'm male, I'm non-disabled, able-bodied, and I've come from I'm in a pretty good place in life. And so when having my family, when deciding to go through surrogacy to start our family, that's a journey where a lot of people make assumptions based on who you are. I have a son and a daughter, and it's funny navigating the world as a white male where people assume that you're straight when you then say that you have children. Um, but my son knows no different. My son and daughter know no different. Um, my mom, my understanding of disability really expanded when my mom unfortunately ended up needing to require a wheelchair for her mobility to get around. And so this is a picture of when we went to Windsor Castle to collect my MBE from King Charles for the work that I've done on diversity in engineering. Um, but I have expanded my knowledge and understanding because I've helped my mum navigate the environment, and understand what limited accessibility is like. Had that not happened to her, I wouldn't have had that grounding of lived experience. I would have simply My point of reference would be what I've observed, what I've read in the media, what I know about. So shaped by my biases. And this is something that we need to be really aware of. What is shaping our perceptions of the world, what we've been through, and who we're surrounding ourselves with, what they've experienced as well. So at Equal Engineers, which is the business that I set up, I'm really interested in making safety and inclusion inseparable. Our pillars are leading on safe and inclusive leadership, building accessible and equitable pathways, and using evidence for change using data, research, and storytelling. We also do connection through communities and shared purpose. We have a whole community of network groups that based on different identities that bring people together, and we run events to bring connection. The Safe Leader is one of the pillars of our flagship training programs, and I'm going to now unpack for you how, like, the journey to, I've set the foundations of the inspiration for moving into DEI from being a safety engineer. And I want to share with you my experiences of working with male majority groups and how we can use safety as a way to improve psychological safety in the workplace. When I set Equal Engineers up in 2018, I discovered some alarming statistics. So I was running an LGBT organization. I then set up an organization to focus on underrepresented groups. And we were having some traction, but I really felt that the people who are the most represented in the current composition of the sector, 86% men, it just wasn't really resonating. They weren't really feeling part of the movement or part of the work. And I was on a panel where I heard about some statistics from the United Kingdom's Office of National Statistics, so the equivalent of the Bureau of Labour Statistics, the BLS. And I discovered that the rate of loss of life due to suicide in the United Kingdom, when broken down by occupation, the construction, manufacturing, and process industries had the highest rate than any other sector. And I just couldn't believe this. So I commissioned our own research and we founded the Masculinity in Engineering research theme. We've been running this for 3 iterations now, 3 cycles, and I'm presenting to you data from the first 2 sections, first 2 surveys. 900 engineers responded to this, and in the first survey, 1 in 5 engineers said that they'd lost a work colleague to suicide. The same number, 1 in 5 in 2019, also said they had had suicidal ideation or self-harm. When we reran that survey in 2021, mid-pandemic, that latter number went up to 1 in 4. 1 in 4 engineers reported suicidal ideation or self-harm. So I had this situation where I was like, well, if the intention of inclusion and belonging diversity programs are to create places where you can be your whole self, bring your whole self to work, be your best version of yourself, obviously this wasn't working for a majority group. Otherwise, at the extreme end, would we have such high incident rates of suicidal ideation and self-harm? Are we treating the brain as an organ in the workplace with the same respect and care as we treat our bodies and how we protect ourselves from slips, trips, and falls and electrocution and dropped objects and all the other hazards that process safety hazards that we could be up against? So this is really interesting to me, this intersection of physical, technical safety, psychological safety, and how can we put them together to ultimately say to men, look, this is about you as well. This is about us as well. You know, it's not just about underrepresented groups. And I've found that the more I've delivered presentations and conferences and keynotes, when you make the linkage with safety and inclusion, that's when you start to open up more people. More people buy into it, they support it. And I've found that there are a lot of things in the workplace that just aren't getting oxygen or being spoken about. If people are struggling to conceive, fertility issues, you know, gambling, addiction, things that make people be physically present but mentally absent. And we want workplaces where people are fully present, mentally and physically, especially if they're performing high risk operations, high risk tasks. So I'm really interested in that interplay, and that's the field of my research and the work that we do. Because in the pendulum swinging back and forth, the progress of equality, we see a swing forward, and that's what I lived through in the mid 2010s with interengineering and setting up network groups. But what we're in now is a bit of a swing back. And our workplaces represent our society, and what happens outside now comes into the workplace as well. And people often conflate psychological safety with making everyone become agreeable and changing people's opinion. It's actually about allowing conscious difference to coexist such that people can voice up their concerns. People can say when things are not right. That's what a just safety culture is. They're the exact same thing. And so what we've had is a gradual normalization of non-inclusive behaviors. We've had a boiling point of people feeling excluded, men, and we're seeing this pushback now. Yet in all this time, we've seen these data sets of mental ill health problems, construction worker safety. You know, construction has the highest rate of loss of life in the United States than any other sector, I believe. Over 700 construction workers die by suicide each year. That's more than 2 per day. So I see these statistics as the equivalent of more than near misses. There are early warning indicator signs that we need to be tuned into. And for us to be able to tune into changes in people's behavior, we need to know our team. We need to know our colleagues and what's going on beneath the surface, what's going on in their lives. And we're just not great at scaffolding that type of culture sometimes interpersonally, especially when you've got a male majority in your broader industry. So that's what we're exploring here. Now, I did say that most of the framework and the constructs and models, etc., that are in my book, copy of my book here, we follow safety principles. There are safety analogies in there. So I'm presenting one to you here, looking at the DuPont-Bradley curve, which shows injury rate as a function of culture. So in the past, we kept ourselves safe based on our natural instincts. That's our amygdala and the core of our brain that's responsible for our fight or flight responses. It was useful in the past when we used to have saber-toothed tigers chasing us, not so useful now. But it's the thing that if you're standing up and you're about to hit your head on a cupboard and you sort of move before you actually consciously see the cupboard, it's that radar system around you that's affecting those responses. But not great in a workplace scenario, or not efficient, I guess, in a workplace scenario. Over the years, we realized as the Industrial Revolution started and we had high workplace incident rates in some cases, we realized it was quite good to not have our workers die at work. So legislation started to come in. The motivation for reducing injury rates was very much compliance driven. It was supervision. I do it because my supervisor says so. As individuals, we realized it was quite good not dying at work. So for our own self-preservation, we begin to proactively look out for ourselves. And then an interdependent culture is where we're looking out for one another. So we're creating safe teams. But safety performance plateaus. And, there's an aspiration to get to zero incidents, right? Now, I'm proposing in my model an extension to the Bradley curve, which looks at creating inclusive interdependence, creating safe teams. So I'm looking out for people, I'm looking out for colleagues, and by reciprocity, they're also looking out for me. And I know that then that's going to drive up the standard. And it's a slightly subtle retweak on stage 4 of interdependence, of simply looking out for teams, because you may not always be looking out for one another. Like sometimes we can be driven selfishly and always thinking about oneself. There are people in the workplace that we might not respect or might not lean into, but irrespective of those types of workplace dynamics, having that cornerstone of foundation and care, irrespective of viewpoints, etc., you're looking out for one another, and by reciprocity, they look out for you. The equivalent in the DEI language world is being an ally. That being an ally to a group that you don't belong to when times are easy is stage 4. But when communities come under threat and they're under pressure and they're being victimized, etc., that's when it becomes tough. That's when it becomes hard. And some people may step back. They become more passive. They become less likely to intervene when they see something that doesn't look right. And the key to inclusive interdependence in safe teams is that you're always, always on radar, looking out for that. And I saw this play out in practice. I was at a railway depot outside London delivering my training on inclusive leadership. Brought into a bunch of engineers, 4 engineers, body language closed, arms folded. You know, they did not want to be there. And I said, guys, I'm not holding you hostage. You can leave if you want. But what happened in that session was quite remarkable. One of the engineers, it was around about the time of Brexit, and one of the engineers said, this is great for the country. We're going to be able to control our own borders. We can decide what we want to do, you know, opportunity. And there was another gentleman who was quiet. And he said, Mark, do you know, I go home at night and my wife, she's Polish and she doesn't know what this means. Is she going to get indefinite leave to remain? Are we going to have to spend time apart? Is she going to get deported? What does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean for us as a couple? And he has to contain it for her. Zip. And then he comes into the workplace and he turned to his colleague in that moment and said, and you just keep going on and on and on. I've had enough. You're really getting to me. I draw their attention back to me and I say, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That was very brave. So those gentlemen, those guys had not been having that conversation. And this had been bubbling and bubbling and bubbling. And what that individual was doing is an example of what we call masking, covering, hiding, being in the closet, so to speak, about how he truly was feeling that day, showing up at work. And that's an energy delta. Think how the energy penalty that's being lost on him suppressing that emotion on how he really feels, this up and down mental state, going home, coming in, going home, coming back. It was bubbling up and then it bubbled over in that place. So we want cultures, we want places where people can share where things are going wrong or what's happening at home, and at least create workplace cultures where they know they can be open if they need to be. We're not mandating that they have to be, but it's very different working in an empathetic and compassionate culture than one which is more don't ask, don't tell, we don't want to know, just come in, do your work, and off you go. You're going to get different results from those different types of cultures, and what you cultivate from those cultures depends on who you have leading them. I'm doing this talk very fast, by the way. I usually take a lot shorter, a lot longer. So what my gift to the world and how I've synthesized all of this is into the SAFE leader, where SAFE stands for share, act, feel, empower. Think of it like a lighthouse. A lighthouse is it's an object that's physically present. It's engineered to give out a light, to provide safety and guide vessels to safety that are at sea. If you don't share, think of your stories as being lighthouses. Every time we have more people sharing their story and being open about what they're going through, it destigmatizes certain things, makes certain topics less taboo, and helps us open up to understand how they're truly being at work. I'm a big, staunch advocate that as men, we need to be doing this more. Because if we were doing this more and we had more lighthouses, more stories, more hooks that we could hook onto and hear things that we can then relate to, I think that doing that on a larger scale will help solve some of the issues that we're seeing at the extreme end. And it's a cycle. Share, act, feel, empower. Share your story, take action. When you hear other people's experiences and stories, react to it empathetically, figure out how can you support them, what can you learn from it, because we're all by definition different, 8 billion people on this planet. And then I encourage you to feel empowered. What can you improve on? This is like a continuous improvement cycle. Where can you widen the aperture on your lived experience and acquire greater learned experience so that you can become a better leader? And also, what is it that you can share? What have you been through that maybe others, by virtue of hearing that, means that they'll then be able to be open and talk about it? A problem shared is a problem halved, that age-old adage. And I cannot stress to you the importance of opening up conversations on things that are currently preoccupying people's minds. It's such a powerful tool for us to properly make change and engage more empathetically as a workforce. And I actually think, independent of what's happening out there on diversity and inclusion and this group and that group and blah blah blah, I think this is where this work sits. There's so much power in creating safe cultures because we need to do it. We need to attract talent. We need to retain talent in high risk industries, and we need people to be fully present, focused on the job at hand. So one of the things we offer is safe leader training. We spend one module per letter. It can be tailored to organizations. And I should have said, actually, a strong component to this backbone is public speaking training. So we take people through public speaking training, get them to get comfortable sharing a story, because you can write many stories. And it helps people understand their own point of differentiation. And even if people who come on the course just simply feel more comfortable doing that self-introspection first, because some of us, that's the starting point, then that's a real win. I'm going to come off now for some Q&A because I'm conscious of time. But what I'd like to offer a workshop. We're going to go into this, so it's a free workshop to attendees on here. We're going to look at the Safe Leader Framework in more detail, give you a chance to assess how safe your organization truly is using our models. And then, give you some strategies for improving trust, well-being, embedding psychological safety, and give you a taster for helping improve your storytelling skills.